Hi, my name is Julie Roca, and you have found the podcast Aging Gracefully with Julie Roca. As we age, sometimes the mind changes. Sometimes we can look at our loved ones and say, oh my goodness, you're letting people take advantage of you. How have you given all of this money away? It becomes a crisis. And so today I wanted to bring someone who is really kind of an expert on the exploitable brain and is becoming more of one all the time. So Shannon Miller, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Julie, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. So share with us, how are you where you are as an elder law attorney here in Gainesville, Florida?
Yeah, so I kind of started my journey as an elder law attorney way back, way back, and realized that a lot of what I was seeing in my practice was this tendency for people to become exploitable as they age. And what I would see is this incapacity that's pretty extreme. It's like you can't make decisions about, your medical, you can't make decisions about financial, you can't make decisions about where to live, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty much an extreme version of the brain changes.
And that's when you're calling in, memory support, and it's very obvious.
Yes.
At that point.
Right.
Yeah.
But in my practice, what we would then also see is this time before that, right? And we know from the research, the brain researchers, and we've had quite a bit of brain research on this time before incapacity.
Yes.
So what we're learning now is that there's these brain changes that happen over about a 20-year time period.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And during that 20-year time period, at about year 10, we're seeing changes that are so severe that we need a guardianship or someone else to make decisions for us. Okay. Sometimes that's an agent under power of attorney. Sometimes that's a healthcare decision maker. If there hasn't been any planning, then what we often see is the need for a guardianship at that time.
And at this time, you may be seeing someone that is walking and talking and still able to dress themselves and kind of function in society.
Yes,
right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's, they've had a stroke or they've had some other kind of healthcare event. And what we're seeing is really an inability to do some of those daily living tasks.
Yes. Yeah.
But what we know about the research is that from that year, like 10 years to 20 years, we have tools. So we have the mini mental status exam. We have the MOCA test. We ask, do you know who the president is? Can you spell world forward and backwards? Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens, right?
Yeah.
So we have these tools. They're all tested, draw a clock face. And what we know about that research is that it tells us different things about the brain, right? So it tells us that the brain has progressed to this point where these people can no longer make these decisions for themselves, right? So we have that pretty nailed down from the science world. What we don't have nailed down is this time period from year 10 to year 1. Right? And that is where we're lacking this basic research, this basic science on what is happening in the brain.
And that's that time period where you're going to see just a basically normal functioning human being, except that in the brain, there's already radical changes made.
Right. And so we have a couple of research, studies that have been conducted that are very impactful. And there was one that just happened out of the University of Florida in May of last year that I'll talk about more. But the foundationary research is we took a study size of like 36 people, very small, and this was back in 2017, and we exposed all of them to scams, right?
Yeah.
So half of them fell victim to the scam, and the other half did not. And we put all of them under an MRI to look at their brains, and what we found was a thinning of the cortical insula in the brain.
Yeah.
And what that tells us is, what we're seeing as far as the symptoms go is an inability to assess risk. So if I give you $3,500, if I give you $3,500 for this lottery tax payment, you're going to give me $1 million.
Right.
And I don't see a risk there. I have an inability to see that me giving you $3,500 in exchange for $1 million is risky. I can't assess that anymore. The other thing is I can't tell the difference between the truth and a lie. So no matter what you tell me, I go, oh, I believe that. There's a man who comes to my door and says, your tree has canker and we need to cut it down.
Okay. Yeah.
If you pay me $5,000 today, I will get you on our schedule. It's going to be hard, but I'll get you on our schedule. We'll come, we'll cut the tree down, and then you can give me the other $5,000.
And we'll keep you safe that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to spread to all your trees. Your tree's going to fall on your house. And, we can take care of this, but you're going to have to sign today for us to get you on the schedule.
Crazy.
Cannot tell the difference between the truth and a lie. Okay? And so what happens in these cases is, in addition to that, we layer in $59.6 billion a year that's going out to scammers and exploitation. And that's the recent numbers. So that's in 2024, right?
Yeah.
The numbers in 2023 were $40 billion. The numbers in 2022 were $36.4 billion.
So someone else is learning how
Yes.
to manipulate
It's
this
called
exploitable
organized
brain.
crime. It's organized crime.
They're getting
right?
smarter.
They know more about the exploitable brain than we know at all.
Golly.
Yeah. So what they're doing out there is they've learned that the more information they can get from you as a potential victim. So first of all, they want to know, do you pick up the phone and talk to strangers, right? That's their main mechanism for reaching people. And if you stay on the phone with an exploiter or a scammer, they learn things about you. They learn what your currency is. So
Yes. Talk to us about the currency.
Yes, what is your currency? Like, my currency is yoga. My currency is helping seniors. Like, I love it. It feeds my soul. So if those exploiters knew that that was my currency, they're going to create a scam about yoga, or they're going to create a scam about serving seniors.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And that feeds me. So we have I'll just do couple of quick stories. We have a lady, her husband died. She's a widow. And she went on Millionaire Match. And the gentleman on Millionaire Match found out that her currency was she wants to be loved like her husband used to love her. Yeah. And through various techniques that don't involve text messaging or phone calls, so they use WhatsApp, they use Millionaire Match to communicate, they were able to extract from her over a 2-year time period $3 million. $3 million. Even though... Right? We had explained to her in great detail, her sons had explained to her in great detail that this was not real. This person's picture, who she'd been shown, was actually a Dubai podcaster, believe it or not, who, his pictures had been stolen and were being used to fabricate, these people. And so he wasn't who he said he was at all. And to this day, she's still attached to this belief that this person at some point is going to come in, marry her, and he's in love with her. Right?
It breaks my heart.
I know. And so then, so that they learned her currency. The same was true with another gentleman who he gave away $7 million over 3 months. And his currency was venture capital. So he could find a product, be able to recognize its value, and turn it into a very valuable business. So, these are the things, right? The longer you stay on the phone, the more valuable your information is. So if you're that person who is going to pick up the phone and tell the scammer off, right?
Right.
The scammer wins because if they keep you on the phone, they get to make more money as the scammer. The more information they get from you, the more they get paid by their employer. Because remember, this is organized crime.
Yeah.
So it's very valuable to them.
So sometimes if we think it's a telemarketer, and I'm bringing this up for my kids' benefit.
Yeah.
If we think it's a telemarketer and we decide we're going to play around with them, you actually may be getting a criminal on the other end of that line, and you're not playing around with them. They're playing around with you.
Right. And it's almost even simpler than that. Right? Because that person on the end of the line, like, they're ringing up dollar bills the longer they keep you on. They will get paid more money this person sitting in, usually it's North Africa or it's Pakistan or it's some place that doesn't have reciprocity with the United States, okay? So there's no extradition with them. So they're sitting in a country where they will not be prosecuted by us. They can't be reached.
Right.
They can't be reached by us. And what they're doing is they're getting you on the phone. The value of your information goes up. So on the dark web, everyone's information is for sale. But some people's information is more valuable than others. If you've fallen victim to a scam before, that scammer wins the gift cards that you sent, but they also win because your information now is more valuable because you've already fallen victim to one scam. So they can sell your information and give a warranty that this person is vulnerable and you may be able to exploit them, you know? And they can also say, and we kept them on the phone for 17 minutes during a phone call. And again, your information is valuable because all they have to do now is craft a scheme to keep you on the phone longer and they can sell your information again.
Yes.
And that's why we see people who fall victim to scams becoming more targeted. It's because their information is more valuable on the dark web.
And though you want to say it's mostly about seniors, I have actually seen older teenagers, very young adults fall prey to it as well.
Right.
Because they just don't know yet.
Right. And they have that reaction, right? Yes. So this is something that we'll talk about more. But this tendency to pause and to consider the pros and cons of a decision, to reach out to helpers. When we see this thinning of the cortical insula, number one, it's like intuition, right? You're walking down a dark street and you see something nefarious ahead. Most of us are going to go the other direction, right? Yep. Not the vulnerable person who has the thinning of the cortical insula. Their intuition is blocked.
Yes.
So they keep walking right into that dark alleyway and you're like, what are you doing? Don't do that.
Right.
So, but they've lost it. So when, you know, that person comes up and says, you know, even a younger, you know, their brains are developing.
Right.
And they're like, it seems like a good idea to drive 100 miles an hour without our headlights on, right?
Right.
They lack the ability to then weigh the risks and benefits of this and the pros and cons of it. They just react. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But we also see it in someone who strongly attaches to a scheme or a delusion. So we had a lady, beautiful lady. You may have been at this conference when she came to talk about what had happened to her was she got a call and all her intuition was saying, this is a scam, but they said, we're going to arrest you.
Yes.
Yes, right?
I've actually had this call.
Oh my gosh, we're going to arrest you.
Yeah.
You failed to come for jury duty. And she's sitting there thinking, like, my kids have to be picked up from daycare.
I've literally had that call.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. And then she checked the number because it was a spoofing number. So they actually used a real GPD number to contact her. She called the number back, and they pick up. They say it's GPD.
Yes, of course they do.
Right? I mean, these guys are smart. So they're crafting these scams. So she went to the bank and pulled out $3,500. And wired it to this nefarious recipient, even though the bank manager, and she's totally capacitated. She's like a very good therapist in town.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they got her currency. Your kids aren't going to be picked up from daycare. You know, you need to keep me on the phone or we're going to execute this warrant. We're coming for you right now. And it just hit her in the right way during that day that she was vulnerable. And there you go.
To be honest, I was in a panic when they called and told me that for the same reason.
Right?
And so what I did, though, is I hung up the phone and I called the number for Gainesville Police Department.
Yes.
And they said, absolutely not. That's never going to be
happen.
Us.
Right. Right? Yeah. And the pause, that kind of calling your grandchild that's supposedly, now in prison in South America, and don't call your parents because just call the kid. Just call them. Call their cell phone. Just give it a minute. Nothing's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. Yeah. So this tendency to react again, it's this inability to listen to your intuition. It's an inability to assess risk, and it's an inability to tell the difference between the truth and a lie.
Yep.
And before we came on, you and I were talking a little bit about this idea of interoception.
Yes,
right?
and I really want you to share this.
Yeah, interoception is going to be the new neuroplasticity for seniors. It really is. And basically what it is it's this ability to connect with your internal organs.
Yep.
So that sounds so hokey, I know. But if you were to sit and just start to dial into the beating of your heart, and the question would be, can you tap out the beating of your heart? And I'm not doing it right now because, like, I'm nervous.
But I can hear mine.
Right?
I can feel mine.
So if you could do that, then you have pretty good interoception. And what we find is that older adults tend to lose that mind-to-body connection. And that, in and of itself, we found in this research study that was done at the University of Florida in May of last year, tells us people who don't have interoception are correlated with exploitability.
Which is crazy.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And so the brain researchers, Natalie Ebner, who's at the University of Florida, is one of the main researchers. We have some researchers up in Canada who are looking at these same issues. What we're starting to understand is that as we connect to the body, we become better at perceiving risk and better at assessing the difference between the truth and a lie.
Which is incredible.
It's incredible. So what they did in this study is they had people tap out the beat of their hearts, and then they correlate it with their actual beating hearts. Were they accurately tapping out the beat of their hearts?
Yeah.
Then they showed them several videos. All the videos were of people who were like either lying about a kidnapping or telling the truth about a kidnapping. And this had all been verified, right? So we had 7 videos. Some were lies and some were true. The people who had interoception were 100% accurate on assessing which ones were true and which ones were not. The ones who didn't have it were 100% inaccurate. Not 100% because they guessed sometimes and they guessed right. But it was crazy how interoception was correlated. And this was a relatively large study size. I want to say it was like 1,500 people,
That's a good size.
Yeah. So it was a much more indicative study that tells us that this kind of internal brain area, right?
Yep.
This kind of place where we're starting to see the pathways not as open, that's the key. Can we reopen those pathways? And so, right? And so what we're learning is we can. And the way to do that is by doing this breath work, starting to identify internally with your body, and things like Qigong or yoga or Tai Chi or the breath work that you and I were talking about.
And I know you do the Wim Hof.
I do the
method.
Wim Hof.
My husband's going to love this whole episode because he's all about the Wim Hof.
Yay, do the Wim Hof.
And then he's also very much about pushing yourself, pushing your body.
Yes.
You were talking about the cold plunge, which,
yes.
I mean, to be honest, I roll my eyes.
Yeah,
and
it's
all my
hard.
boys start talking about the cold plunge and the ice baths. But explain to me why you think that is helpful.
So the way that I deal with it in my own life, and I actually am one of those people that did not have interoception. So when I initially tried to tap it out, I was like, what? I'm a yoga instructor. How can I not have interoception? But I don't. I didn't have interoception until I started to do the breath work and do the training. And now my interoception's quite good. But with the cold plunging, what happens is you go into the bath. Or, I also do a cold shower. I do it as cold as the water can get, and I wait until I calm before I get out. And sometimes that's a minute, sometimes it's 3 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, and the cold is beating down on your head, and it can be quite uncomfortable at first. And what your brain is telling you is like, get out. You're going to die here if you don't get out of this water.
That's what it tells me anyways.
Right? And then you stay in it. You just stay in it. And then what you learn is that your brain is not always right because you didn't die. You did not die in the cold water. You actually start to breathe. You start connecting with your internal self, your breath, your heartbeat, and you calm. And you realize the water is just cold water hitting your body. And by that kind of ability to maintain that discipline, that your mind is not always right, that if you go back to what you know, which is I've done this so many times, I know that I'm not going to die, right? Then I can resist that urge to react and jump out of the water. And then it carries with you with everything. So like everything that you do where you're wanting to react with anger or you're wanting to react with some other, thing, fear.
Yeah.
You just realize like I don't have to because I've learned in the cold plunge that I don't die. And it just kind of translates into this kind of neuropathway opening that allows you to get into the pause.
That's so interesting to me. So now I want to say this.
Yes.
If you are a senior with a lot of health issues,
yes.
I feel like you should speak to your physician.
You should.
You try
we don't want any heart attacks. Please, no heart attacks. If you have congestive heart failure, this is not for you.
Not for you.
Do not do the cold plunge. Now, there are other things that you can do, and the breath work is great. The breath work is great. Of course, talk to your doctor about the breath work as well, because there is a lot of breath holding when we do the breath work.
Yeah, that is another one.
Yeah. Yeah, and you with the breath holding in like the Wim Hof method or any other breath method, I've done the Prema breath work, there's somatic breathing, there's all kinds of breath work out there, and they're all great. But when you're, in the holding, if the urge to breathe, you can breathe. Like, don't hold your breath to where you pass out.
Yeah,
if there's an urge to breathe, there's probably a reason, and it's probably a good idea to take a breath.
Yes.
So, but things do happen when you're in the holding, like when you can relax and say, my mind is telling me breathe, but I can relax and kind of feel the earth underneath my body. And it's that same thing with the cold, where your brain is saying, you have to breathe right now or you will die. And then you don't. And then, you get this huge benefit of this discipline. And what we know when we look at the brains under the Wim Hof, like when you have an MRI and you're doing the Wim Hof method, we can even see the pathways opening.
Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. We did the Wim Hof method pretty religiously during COVID. Because
oh my gosh.
We were hoping
yes.
That it was
and it
build our lungs and the capacity in case we got COVID. And, I thought it was pretty great. And
it's pretty great.
We slid out of it, but I think we need to slide back in.
Yeah. And I did a hot yoga practice, which is the same thing. It's like you're tolerating something at 105 degrees that, your mind is saying, yeah, it's uncomfortable. But now I love it. It feeds me.
It's funny.
Yeah, and the cold feeds me too. When I miss a day of the cold, I'm like, okay, why are you anxious right now? Well, you didn't do your cold plunge today, so
Okay, so
yeah,
makes that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Well, before we run out of time,
yes.
I want to know. So, if someone has been exploited,
yes,
what can they do? What can family do if they're seeing this exploitable
in
their loved one?
We have so many great tools in Florida for dealing with exploitation.
I think a lot of those have to do with you.
Yes. We've the elder law section of the Florida Bar, and it's really become something that's important to me personally. Just having seen a lot of our clients really get caught up in an exploitation event, like the ones I've explained. Just basically it kills them. I know people are like, no, it doesn't. It does.
It does.
It does because you're embarrassed. Your money's gone.
Yep.
You have no way of supporting yourself. Yeah. You may have to be deposed, go through litigation, hire lawyers. Like you don't even. It's your family is upset with you. They thought maybe you were going to leave them money. Like it's heartbreaking.
And sometimes they end up having to take over your finances because you spent all your money.
Right.
And now you still need care.
Right.
It's at a high level, and now they have to take care of it.
And, we were just talking about, looking at your credit report, and when you're trying to get into a facility that requires you to pass a certain level of credit, and they see this history of you having given your money away, they don't want to take you because they're afraid you're going to give your money away while you're a resident there, you know? Yeah. And, they've got bills to pay. So, also with Medicaid qualification, if there's 5-year look back, if you've given money away without value, Medicaid will not allow you to, they will deny your application. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why exploitation is so terrible, but we have the exploitation injunction in Florida. And that mechanism is available to victims, but it's also available. So if you are a victim and you realize that somebody has scammed you or exploited you, then you can actually go into court and have the assets frozen. So, for example, if my caregiver came in and I realized that I had written her a check for $5,000 when I meant for it to be $500,
right.
and she keeps it, I can actually go into court myself, and the court can actually freeze her assets by virtue of that exploitation.
Okay.
And it's done ex parte, which ex parte means like the judge sees your petition that's filed. You don't even have to have an attorney to do it. The judge sees your petition that's filed, and they can freeze the assets without telling the person who exploited you.
So it can be quick.
It can be quick.
Sometimes getting in touch with an attorney and
Yes.
setting up those appointments that
Yes.
takes maybe
Takes
weeks
time.
at a time.
Takes a lot of time. Yeah.
That's something that can be done quickly, and that's good to know.
It's beautiful in Florida because judges hate this stuff. So they see these petitions come in. They usually rule on it within 24 hours of it being
They're like,
filed.
nah, we're doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
then there's a hearing that happens 15 days later where we do have to serve that person. The elder law section of the Florida Bar has actually developed some legislation for next year that is actually going to allow us to serve the scammer. So, we talked about these scammers not being real people, but they communicate by WhatsApp or Millionaire Match.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're actually creating new legislation that will allow us to serve this person, Tom, or whoever it is, even if we don't know their name, by the same method that they've had contact with our victim. So we're going to be able to serve them through WhatsApp or through Millionaire Match discussions. However they've been in contact with our victim, our little family can kind of assess, like, we know that she's communicating with him via Telegram or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's the method that then we can serve them with the order from the judge.
And does it stop it then?
So then what the judge can do is they will enter an order that creates an event where the monies come back to our vulnerable person. Sometimes we have to do a guardianship to protect them. Sometimes that person will let us just put the money into a trust where we have another trustee who might be a family member or an agent under power of attorney can manage their account.
Yes.
So it's good to kind of have some sort of mechanism, whether it's guardianship or a trust or some other type of protected account where our victim can't then give money away again because the brain hasn't changed usually.
And you have an app too that's
the
out
Careful
there.
app. Yes. Yes. We love the Careful app. The Careful app with 2 L's, and I have no interest in it. Like, I just love the app. We use it for all of our clients coming into our life care planning model. Everybody signs up for the Careful app. And then we also have a dashboard that tells us when an alert goes out on the app. So you put all your assets, you let the assets go into the app, and then a notification is sent out when you pay a bill twice, when you forget to pay a bill, when you're sending money to an unusual recipient, when you've opened a new credit card. When you've done something unusual, the app sends out a message to your monitors, to your trusted contacts.
Awesome.
They can't freeze your stuff down, so people feel good about that. They don't want their families to be able to lock their money down, right?
They still want that freedom.
Right. But the person gets notified and calls mom and says, hey, what's going on with this gift card purchase at CVS for $1,000?
Right.
So... Yeah, so it's a really great little tool.
That seems like a great tool.
Yeah, and it's Careful with 2 L's.
Okay.
And I think, it's getcareful.org
awesome.
is the
And if people want you, if they want to chat with you, how do they best get a hold of you?
You can call us. We're at the Miller Elder Law Firm. We have 3 attorneys. We all deal with exploitation issues on a regular basis. And our phone number is 352-379-1900.
And I will also leave a link in the description.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Shannon, for coming.
Julie.
I could talk to you much longer. So we'll probably have to have Shannon back
Please
again.
have me back. I love to talk about this stuff.
But if you have not yet liked the podcast, we would love it if you would like it. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and definitely share this with others because I think this is very helpful information.
It is.
Thanks
you.
again,
Thanks for
Shannon.
doing what you do, Julie. You're such an amazing person, and I so appreciate all the things you do for our senior community.
You too.